Hello and welcome back to another TechNet video. Today I'm going to be talking through the Edit tab in Davinci Resolve. I've opened up Davinci and I've started a new project and I've headed straight to the Edit tab. Now, if you've never used any editing software before, that is absolutely fine. I'm going to talk you through everything on your screen. If you have used Premiere Pro before, it should start to look a little bit familiar. This is your preview window. So this is what we're going to watch to know what's going to be exported as our final video. Below here is our timeline. This is where we're going to be making all our cuts and edits. We also have our toolbar along at the top here. So this is what we're going to use to be making those cuts. And then over here we have our bin. Now our bin isn't actually like a rubbish bin, it is our folder. It's how we're going to drag and drop all of our video footage onto our timeline. And the biggest piece of advice I can give you is keep your project nice and organised. An organised and tidy project means that you're going to have a swift edit. So I'm going to right click on this bin and press new bin. Bin is basically another word for folder here. And I'm going to call this footage. You might want to add more folders within that for different cameras or different locations, however your brain works, but just make sure it's nice and neat and organised. And then I'm going to do the same thing for audio. And I'm going to open up my file explorer. And if you want to follow along with this tutorial using the same footage as me, feel free. In the college, on the media and film server, in student resources, in tutorials, editing exercises, and horror sequence is this kind of stock footage that I'm going to be using today. So I'm just going to select this footage and drag and drop it into my footage bin. Now it's really important here that we don't change the project frame rate, and I'll tell you why in a sec. But make sure you've got all of those videos in, and then drag our audio into our audio folder. Now, remember that pop-up that came up saying, do you want to change sequence settings? This is the point at which we're going to make sure that our project is set up correctly. So you want to head to File, Project Settings, and that's going to bring up this box here. We want to make sure that we are editing in horizontal because I'm going to be making a film. Then you want to check your timeline frame rate. Now, traditionally, this should be set to 25 frames per second. So make sure when you're filming, you're shooting in 25 frames per second, so then we can make sure our timeline is nice and smooth. So I'm going to save those and make sure I've changed that frame rate to 25 frames a second. And now I'm going to look in my footage, and if I hover over it, I can start to see what that is going to look like. So the first shot that I'm going to edit is this one here, and I'm going to click and hold my left mouse and drag and drop it onto our timeline, and you can see that that's now come alive. I'm going to hold Alt down on my keyboard and use the scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom out of that timeline, and I can do the same to zoom in to look at specific details. And I'm going to take my razor tool, which is this one here in my toolbar. It will highlight itself in red to show that it's been selected. And then I'm going to scrub through until action begins. I'm going to use my arrow keys to get this cut nice and precise. And then I'm going to click and make a cut. Now you can also use the shortcut Control B to make cuts with the razor tool, whatever you would prefer. And then I'm going to let this play through by using my spacebar. And as soon as our subject is out of frame, I'm going to make another cut. And I'm going to select the part of the footage that I don't want and press backspace to delete it, and then click in the space in my project and press backspace to shift everything along to make sure there's no gaps in our footage. If you can have a go with making a few cuts and popping together a sequence, and then press play again. Now, I've created a short sequence of shots. You'll notice over here I have one shot over the top of another. So if I play that through, you'll see that it will cut to that second camera and then cut back to that first camera. Premiere Pro and Davinci Resolve work in the same way, where it's almost as if you're on a top-down view of the project, and whatever is on the top row of that timeline is what's going to show on top of everything else underneath it. If you'll notice here, where I've got two clips stacked on top of each other, I don't really want to use this piece of audio, but currently, if I get rid of that, it's going to get rid of the video too. So I just press Ctrl-Z to backspace that. Now, I want to unlink these so I can get rid of this piece of audio. So I'm going to right click, and where it says link clips, I'm going to untick it. And now you'll see that when I select one of them, it doesn't select both of them. So I can backspace and get rid of that piece of audio. Now, I might want to fade in to this sequence, and there are a couple of ways that I could do that. I'm going to zoom in to this beginning part of my timeline, and you will see these white clips. Now, if I hover over that, two arrows appear, and I can drag that across that clip, and you'll see it now fades in. The further along that is dragged across, the slower that fade is going to be. You can also do exactly the same thing with your audio. The other way we can do this is through our effects tab. Now, that sits up here, and I'm going to click it, and it will pop up another box that we can use. Now, I want this to be a video transition, and I want to dissolve between one shot into the next. So I'm going to scrub through this to see if that is the effect that I want to go for. I like the look of that. So I'm then going to drag and drop that over the two clips. And can you see how it's overlapping both clips? That's what we want. And if I hover at either end, I can then make this longer or shorter. And exactly like with the fade, that's going to determine how quickly or slowly it dissolves. If you don't like it, you can click on it and press backspace, and it will get rid of that effect for you. You have loads and loads of transitions to look through. There's also lots of kind of effects. So there's a glitch effect, or a kind of crazy warp, or kind of PowerPoint-like transitions that I try and stay away from. Now you can do exactly the same thing with transitioning audio. So I'm going to click on audio transitions, and we have 3 options. Now, if you don't want the audio levels to change between the crossfade, you're going to want to click this one here, 0. If you wanted it to increase slightly, going from one clip into another, you could click crossfade plus 3 dB. If you wanted it to decrease slightly, then you'd want to press -3. So I'm going to drag and drop this over my clip, and exactly the same as with the video, I can make this longer or shorter depending on the effect I want to create. This tab is also where you're going to put on any effects you want to affect the whole video or the whole audio. So filters is where we're going to start to create unique and interesting looks. So we have things like blurs or a vignette. So have a look and see if there's a certain effect that you want to create. If you ever come across this logo where it says Davinci Resolve Studio and lots of dots across your screen, that means that unfortunately that effect is not available in the free version of Davinci. So if you wanted to use that, you'd have to get the paid version. But for me, I don't think that there's many of these options that you'd necessarily need for simple edits. So I've never run into it as being a big issue. I like the look of this film damage, so I'm just going to drag and drop that over my clip, and you can see that that has now affected my footage. If I wanted to kind of adjust this effect, I would want to go to my inspector, and you can see that it's on the effects tab, and I can change how much the film is blurred. I can change the temperature shift and the tint. And you can see that I've got lots and lots of control over this effect, and that will be the same with any effect that you drop on, so you can adjust it to how you'd like. Still with that inspector tab open, I'm going to show you all the different things you can do. So you can crop your videos if you go to the cropping tab. Like I am sat in the corner of this video, I could make this sit in the corner of another video. So I might want to crop it left and right. And you can see this is a really good example of what it means to stack those clips. So you can see that this is sat underneath this clip. I then might want to use the zoom to adjust and the position to move it left and right or up and down. And you can see how this is now sat in the corner of the screen. Now obviously for a film that is no good, so I'm going to press Ctrl Z until we are back to normal. I want to add a title, and I'm going to go to the titles tab. Now you have lots of different presets, which are all super handy. Some of them are a bit wacky, but I think the best text option you could choose is the one called Text Plus. This gives you complete control over everything. So you can change font, colour, size, location, whether it has a drop shadow or not. So Text Plus is the one you really want to go for. So I'm going to drag and drop this on top of my clips. You can see that it's a different colour. That indicates that it's a text layer. And if I click on it, you can see that I've got all these different settings that I can adjust. So first of all, I'm going to change what the text actually says. And I'm going to write title. Then underneath that you can change the font. I like the look of that one. And some of them will have different options, so a bold version or an italic version. I quite like the bold version. And then I can choose my colour. So I'm going to choose a horrible intense red. Now I'm going to scale it up so it fills my screen, and I can also move it around in the settings tab. I'm going to leave it in the middle for now. If you go to shading in the title section, then you have lots of different options. I want to add a drop shadow, and that is preset number 3, and I'm going to tick it so it's enabled, and you can see that it adds that drop shadow. Now you can then adjust all those settings, so how intense that shadow is, how soft it is, so if it's blurry or it's harsh, and the position of it, so where is it going to sit behind those letters. Now I want this text to fly across the screen, so I'm going to go into my settings and I am going to move this off screen to start with, and when it's just off screen I'm going to select that diamond, so that's set that keyframe. Then I'm going to move it in a little bit and I'm going to pop this back to 0, so back to the center of the screen. And then I'm going to move this across. I want it to hold on screen for a little bit, so I'm just going to set another keyframe so it holds at that position for that length of time. And then I'm going to move it along a little bit so it's just off screen. So if we watch that back, you'll see that it moves from point A to point B, stays in that position, and then moves off screen. Now if we wanted to review what we've done in big screen, you can press Ctrl F and hit the spacebar, and then you can watch through your edit in full. So this is where we've got to so far. We've added in text, we've added in some transitions, we've cut together a little sequence. So next time we're going to go through colour correction and a colour grade. So as you can see, all these shots are looking very different, and we need to make them all look uniform and create a look. So that is what we're going to talk through in the colour grade video.